Hey, this is a nice little report, meta-analysis of the media reports by uh, Carbon Brief. I took it and I'm going to just make a very brief podcast out of it because it's got some interesting results. As you remember, this is done for 2023-2024. As you remember, 2023-2024 were record warm years. 2023 was a very strong El Nino, which arrived a little too soon since the previous big event had happened in 2015. You know, we had 1982-83 and 97-98, 2015-16. There seemed to be a rhythm of about 14-15 years between these big monster El Nino events, and then 23 came up very quickly, and then the warming has been very very strong, has not been fully explained because it's not just equal to the superposition of an El Nino on global warming. I have several podcasts discussing those issues. So this is how mapped how extreme weather is destroying crops around the world, and here are some graphics, photos which are images which are really heartbreaking as well. Extreme weather can harm food production in many different ways. So that's a distressed farmer there, and here is a guy looking at the flood. Heavy rainfall flooding orange groves, looked like an Asian country, let's say China maybe, you can check it out. Tropical cyclones tearing down banana plants and coconut trees in some place. Drought leaving rice fields cracked and dry. You know, rice needs often flood irrigation or at least good rains, even if you are using the sustainable methods of the so-called Madagascar rice. But nonetheless, this is a very nice interactive graphics. You can go and click on any of these symbols and you get media details on where, when and where the report was written, in which outlet, and what it was talking about. But basically we're talking about drought in yellow colors, light blue, cold extremes, rain and flooding in blue, storms in this purplish color, heat, extreme heat in red color, and wildfires in the brownish color. Excuse me. Okay, so just look at the colors here. Heavy rain and floods hit a wide variety of crops, particularly in Europe. See the blue colors here, and the Middle East as well, olives and such, and sub-Saharan Africa, which is always very vulnerable. Drought also destroyed flood growing in many parts of the world. So basically every continent has had drought impacts during 2023-24. With so much warming and El Nino, you expect that there will be droughts and wildfires as well. This is for soaring temperatures that left crops withered and scorched, while frost damage to cold during cold extremes. So you can see some European regions where cold extremes were a problem, as well as extreme heat, and similarly in Canada and the US. So we also have compound events like droughts and heat, and I think floods and heat as well, as we will see in a minute. Storms such as typhoons tore through fields and uprooted crops all across, again Europe again getting damaged. There is some message here, because there is nobody that is immune to climate change anymore. Rich countries and poor countries are all getting hammered, so we're all in this together. Nobody is winner, and there may be some winners and losers apparently in one year, but next year may be very different, so we have to be very careful. This is focused on Jamaica. In Jamaica, a hurricane destroyed millions of dollars worth of crops in July 2024, and here many countries faced a combination of weather extremes such as drought and heat, battering crops at the same time, known as compound event. Obviously you can see the colored here, mixed colors here. So floods and heat, and droughts and heat, and sometimes droughts and floods and cold events as well, and so on. And we have talked about compound events elsewhere. Imagine there is a very powerful drought that is running around for, or running underway for weeks and months, because droughts can last for a long time. Floods are fast events that get cleared up. But if there is a drought and soil moisture is gone, soil has dried up, and plants are struggling to not lose their vapor because of their water content, because of water vapor pressure deficit and so on, and then a heat wave comes along and will completely wilt the crops that are already trying hard to survive. In August 2023, a mix of floods and record high temperatures led to a major drop in pear yields from Italian orchards. Here in central Myanmar, drought ruined maize, sesame, and mung bean crops in September 2024. Mung bean is a green gram, which is kind of a staple for many, protein source as well for many people in this area. And obviously, where the loss happens and what kind of crop it is can determine the monetary value of the loss. For example, anything in Myanmar in a poor country may be at a subsistence level, which can be harsh for them in terms of food security, but pear loss here could be cash crop loss for Italy. Italy may not be as vulnerable as Myanmar, even though monetary value of the loss may be much higher, and so on and so forth. We can also look at it in terms of most frequently identified types of extreme weather events that destroyed crops in 23-24 based on global media reports. These are the number of mentions. You can see that rains and floods got the most mentions, over 40. Droughts came in second, around 30, and then heat around 20, storms around 20 as well, cold extremes about 15, and wildfires maybe 4 or so, right? So obviously it's a smorgasbord of extremes across the planet, and many crops as well. So if you look at crops impacted by extreme weather events in 23-24, grouped by food types, you have cereals and grains, fruits, vegetables, oil crops, legumes, and other. So under cereals, you had the most reports, 66. Maize dominated, wheat and rice came in second, sorghum, barley, millet. Under fruit, you had bananas, grapes, tomatoes, breadfruit, cherries, apples, mangoes, oranges. Yes, tomatoes are fruits, they are not vegetables, botanically speaking. Vegetables came in at 28 reports. Potatoes, cabbages, cassava, oil crops. You had olive losses, maybe in the Middle East, sunflower, sesame seeds and rape seeds, and legumes, soybeans and beans. And of course, under other, you had peanuts and coffee. Coffee gets a lot of attention these days as to how warming is making some coffee growing impossible, or how quality may be affected. Same for grapes and wines and so on. Let's look at crops then. Crops most frequently destroyed by extreme weather in 2023 and 24, based again on global media reports. Maize dominated by far in terms of the media reports in extreme event losses as global collection. Wheat came in about at half of that, and so did rice. Potatoes are up there. Soybean, again cash crop mostly. Olives, obviously cash crop. Bananas, grapes, sunflowers, coffee, and so on and so forth, right? And we have to keep track of these things to see if that had something to do with the El Nino and the following failed La Nina and continued warming in 23-24, in 24, sorry, or is this something that happens every year? We can imagine that El Nino had a lot to do with the numbers, but I suspect the patterns are going to be similar anyways. To conclude, for example, I've not read most of the text. There are a lot of nice text references to papers, some solution-like discussion for adaptation, technology, research, and so on. For example, the New York Times reported last year that crop insurance is becoming prohibitively expensive and more difficult to access for some U.S. farmers due to climate change increasing the likelihood of crop destroying extreme weather. We used to talk about insurance companies offering risk underwriting or coverage for people to do things that they shouldn't be doing, like living near coasts or trying to grow things in the wrong place and so on. By providing coverage, they may create so-called moral hazard, where people expose themselves to more risks and so on. But now insurance companies are playing like the gatekeepers, saying we will not cover this there because that's not going to be very it's going to face issues in terms of extreme weather and so on. So it's becoming harder to get crop insurance because farmers just cannot move. They can change crops, but that can be a issue of livelihood and cash crops. In India you will have farmers growing cotton, sugarcane, and other things in the wrong places, mining groundwater and so on, then they get hit with extreme event or compound events and then losses. Even though you see that the amount of profits made by insurance companies never comes down, it's fairly high, so something is missing there. And there are reports that maybe farmers try to cheat on crop losses and so on and so forth. So it's obviously a complicated issue. Although climate change will continue to impact food systems in many different ways, Ortiz, a scientist that was interviewed, points out some solutions such as drought-resistant crops. So people have done it before, where you take corn or maize that is used to dry weather versus wet weather, and you combine them to produce drought-resistant crops. There are a lot of GMOs, and there are lots of issues associated with that, but pretty much adaptation is going to be mandated or required by farmers because things are changing rapidly, warming, extreme heat, droughts, floods, and cyclones, and so on. So the question is, how do we match up the research and technology with what happens on the ground, the accessibility of these technologies, and also the social and political environment that agriculture takes place in, whether it's subsistence agriculture, industrial agriculture, whether it's cash crop, whether it's staple crop, and so on and so forth. And US spends upwards of 6% every year of its GDP on agricultural research. It does very well, even in weather and climate predictions. So is that the same thing in other countries? Well, as I mentioned, India struggles a lot on India has invested a lot in research as well and technologies. There are a lot of smart agricultural kind of startups and so on. So farmers are still systematically getting hammered by extreme weather. So we have to see how research and technologies can be focused on minimizing crop yields. For example, if summer monsoon of India becomes full of extremes, can they make some adjustments to say we'll save as much water as possible in the summer monsoon and try to grow crops in the Rabi season instead of the Kharif season, and so on. So the Kharif production used to be dominant before 30 years ago, but now Kharif and Rabi seasons have similar amounts of grain production because of irrigation and so on. So these are all factors we have to worry about. This is a nice farmer in Mongolia, I think. So he looks happy, even though he may have just gotten hammered by some extreme climate event. Okay, so that should have been the last slide. Yes, it is. So let's leave this here. We'll come back and meet each other in the next podcast. Because I'm arranging these in a certain way, the next topic I can mention, but it will not make sense because it will be placed somewhere else. So either way, see you in the next podcast.